President Marcos says he is open to revisiting the billion-peso estate tax case against his family. In an interview with TV host Tony Gonzaga, Marcos Jr. said his family was not given a chance to air their side.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. The big story tonight.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. addressed the issue surrounding his family's unpaid estate taxes. He says the case should be reopened and argued.
In an interview with blogger and TV host Tony Gonzaga, the president said that their side was not heard because they were still in exile in the United States at the time. In 1997, the Supreme Court ruled that the Marcos family owed the government 23 billion pesos in estate taxes. The tax liability has allegedly ballooned due to penalties and surcharges. Meanwhile, Marcos's political party, Partido Federal ng Pilipinas, earlier agreed that the High Court's decision is final and executory. The surcharges, however, could still be subject to reconciliation. But if given the chance to air their side, Marcos Jr. says their family would look into the properties covered in the said cases.
Here to discuss the implications of possibly reopening the estate tax case of the Marcos family, we have with us via Zoom former Bureau of Internal Revenue Commissioner Kim Henares. Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story, ma'am.
Good evening to you and to your viewers.
Well, let's go straight to this opinion, this comment by President Marcos. Can the case, in fact, still even be reopened? Do they have that option? Is there any legal avenue to do that?
Okay, the case where the Supreme Court's decision is final and executory can no longer be reopened because it has been become final. No? And secondly, I would like to point out that it is erroneous to say that they were not given the opportunity to question it because they were the one who appealed the case to the Court of Appeal and to the Supreme Court. However, I think their lawyer made a mistake by just saying that it was a violation of due process. The levy was a violation of the due process. Their lawyer had the opportunity to question the estate tax return at the time when they filed the appeal in the Court of Appeal and raised it to the Supreme Court, which they never did. So I just want to correct the statement that they were not given the opportunity to question the estate tax return.
Ma'am, they said that if given the possibility, they would like to look into the properties involved in the case. Just to clear it out a bit, which properties exactly are involved and what have been the efforts of the BIR in collecting and is levying a possibility right now to be able to pay the debts and the tax liabilities of the family?
You know, I have not seen the estate tax return. No? The estate tax return was prepared by the commissioner then in 1989 because the Marcos estate failed to file an estate tax return. During my time, the decision has already become final in 2001, and we have a department that goes out and collect and try to collect the tax and levy on the property. And that's what we've been doing and what BIR is continuously doing. No? And they've levied on 11 properties and they've tried to auction it and nobody presented a valid bid. And this property has been transferred to the name of the Republic of the Philippines. No? So to be honest, during my time, the collection process has already gone its course, and I did not really have the opportunity to look at the estate tax return. So I don't know what the properties are.
Yes, but whatever the properties and the values are, including the penalties, given that it is final and executory, how far can the state, and pragmatically speaking, what can still be done for the ruling to actually be enforced and to actually collect on these liabilities?
Actually, my suggestion is that the Bureau of Internal, if President Marcos, BBM, is saying that they want to look at the inventory the only other recourse for it, for a possibility to open it, is for the Bureau of Internal Revenue to file a tax evasion case against the estate of the Marcoses. Now, when the tax evasion case is filed and it reached the court, then that's where the Marcoses can say that there's no tax evasion because first the estate tax return, the inventory is erroneous. Then they prove what are the assets that should not have been included, what should have been included, and then that's how they can open that estate tax return. But as it is now, there's no way to open it.
So, I mean, just to be clear, I mean, to have the BIR file a tax evasion case does still beg the question then of, I mean, why file a case when you are standing on something that is final and executory? Is that correct? Wouldn't there be something supremely ironic in the BIR doing that, and wouldn't that in effect be the BIR bringing it back a few squares?
No, because the reason for filing a tax evasion case is for failure to pay, not failure to file. It has been 2001 up to now. I think the BIR can make an argument that there is because for you to file an evasion case, there is a adjective adverb before failure to pay, which is willful, and that's the hardest part to prove, willfulness, But maybe there can be an argument that since it's already 2001 till 2022, that's already 21 years, that can be a sign of willfulness.
But raising that question will, I mean, regardless of how that is resolved, does not in any way erase what the Supreme Court has already determined.
You cannot reverse this. You cannot reverse the decision of the Supreme Court, because the argument that the Marcos estate raised there was just that the levy that was being done by the BIR lacks due process. They never questioned the estate tax return. What President Bongbong Marcos wants now to do is to question the estate tax return. I'm just saying that legally there's only one way for which you can open the case again, and which is you file a tax evasion case so that the case can probably be open again, and the court can then they raise the point that the return was erroneous and therefore there should have not been a tax evasion case.
Ma'am, you mentioned that this has been 21 years trying to collect the estate taxes, and you also mentioned that 11 properties have been levied. In your perspective, do you think the BIR's efforts have been enough in terms of collecting and being able to levy the properties as needed for the 23 billion case?
Okay. The BIR can only levy on things in the Philippines. If, let's say, the argument is there's a lot of argument that a lot of their assets are abroad. At this point, the BIR cannot reach those assets without the help of those countries. There is a convention that we had proposed that we adopt, which is the Mutual Assistance Convention, which has been with the Senate since 2015. But it has not been adopted yet. If we had adopted that, then we could have gone abroad and asked the various government to help us levy on assets that are abroad. As of now, we don't have that jurisdiction.
All right, maraming salamat po, former BIR Commissioner Kim Henares. After the break, we'll be discussing the talks between the French government and the Philippine government regarding its submarine acquisition program. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Ukrainian Ukrainian troops are reported to be pushing further into areas of northeastern Ukraine that were occupied by Russia and sending Russian troops fleeing. The mayor in southern Ukraine says Russian forces left his city after occupying it since March. That claim could not be immediately verified. The FBI is aiding the investigation of a package explosion on the campus of Northeastern University in Boston on Tuesday evening. A school staff member has minor injuries. Fire authorities northeast of Sacramento say the Mosquito Fire has jumped a river and is threatening to do more damage. CAL FIRE reported on Tuesday that the fire had burned 79 square miles and was 25% contained. Crowds greeted Queen Elizabeth II's coffin outside of Buckingham Palace in London on Tuesday night. On Wednesday, the late monarch will be brought to Parliament to lie in state before her funeral. Rita Foley, The Associated Press, with AP News Minute.
The Justice Department says Donald Trump is trying to have it both ways when it comes to classified documents seized from his Florida home. In a court filing, the government says the former president argues that the documents are personal property and also covered by executive privilege. The government wants to keep using around 100 documents while a so-called special master reviews them for privilege issues. Ukrainian troops have piled pressure on retreating Russian forces, pressing deeper into occupied territory. Kiev's border guard services say the army has taken control of Vovchansk, a town just 2 miles from the border, which Russia seized on the first day of the war. President Putin, meanwhile, is set to hold bilateral meetings this week with the leaders of China, India and Turkey as the Russian leader seeks to use a summit in Uzbekistan to counter his diplomatic isolation. Bloomberg has learned the U.S. may begin refilling its emergency oil reserve when crude prices dip below $80 a barrel. Administration officials are weighing the timing of such a move with an eye towards protecting U.S. oil production growth and preventing crude prices from plummeting. President Biden ordered the release of an historic 180 million barrels from reserve back in March in an effort to tame skyrocketing prices. Queen Elizabeth's coffin has arrived at Buckingham Palace after being flown from Edinburgh by the Royal Air Force. Later today, the coffin will be carried to Westminster Hall, where it will lie in state for 4 days until the Queen's funeral on Monday. Rail companies have announced extra services, including some overnight trains, as thousands of mourners head to London. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Elon Musk is the richest person on Earth because of Tesla and increasingly because of his startup SpaceX. Tesla stock took off like a rocket ship in the early days of COVID, but has since stalled. By contrast, SpaceX has chugged along steadily. But how does anyone who's not a friend of Elon invest in SpaceX, which is not even publicly traded? If you've got the money, start your own firm so that when SpaceX needs to raise capital, you can join a funding round. But you'll need the right Silicon Valley contacts, and even then, you may have to pay up. 5%
You're watching The Big Story here on One News. France says it is more than ready to help the Philippines fulfill its dream of having submarines to boost its maritime strength.
French Ambassador Michel Bocuse said in a press briefing today that France is committed to work more closely with the Philippines as talks on a submarine deal continue between the two nations. Now, to share his thoughts on the matter and insights, we have One News Defense Editor Manny Mogato joining us via Zoom. Hello po, magandang gabi.
Ay, good evening po. Alam niyo po, nag-offer yung French government ng dalawang submarino, no? It's a diesel-electric submarine that will boost our defense capability, especially the anti-access and area denial capability to guard our disputed areas, especially in the South China Sea. However, we still have some problem because the submarine will cost about 70 billion pesos in our budget, and we still do not have that kind of money. Because for 2023, the Congress has only allocated around 40 billion pesos So malaki ang pangailangan natin, and it will take about 10 years to develop a submarine capability, including training of officers and crew, and building of a submarine base, because most of our Navy bases are silted, no? Especially in Cavite. I think the suitable place is only Subic.
Manny, when people hear about us wanting a submarine, people can't quite wrap their heads around it. I mean, how necessary is this? How important this is? But maybe just as a baseline, how does our Navy compare to that of other countries, particularly when it comes to actually having and operating submarines?
Actually, Robbie, we're the only country in Southeast Asia that does not have a submarine capability. No? Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam have submarines. No? In order to protect our seas, especially our claims in the South China Sea, we should have a stronger Navy to protect our interests. And the submarine is a very necessary equipment to do that.
But just to be clear, Manny, because most of what we know are things that we watch in the movies. What role does a submarine actually play in a navy such as ours in particular? Is it something for offense? Is it for defense? Is it just for securing our borders, for monitoring and surveillance? What is it essentially for?
It's basically doing everything else, no? In surveillance, monitoring, patrolling our seas, and it can have an offensive capability when trying to interdict foreign vessels that would encroach into our seas. No? And if you have a submarine capability, the other countries would think twice before crossing into our borders, no? Because we have a very lethal capability in terms of area denial and anti-access, the A2AD capability.
Sir, given, I think it's already a given that it's quite expensive to maintain, to train for submarines, but do you think that the long-term gains might outweigh the cost, given that it could also be an efficient deterrent for countries who are wanting to invade or wanting to encroach upon our waters, especially in the West Philippine Sea?
It is an investment. No, I think it's a very wise investment. But the problem is it's too expensive for a country like the Philippines. I was told that the French government is offering something of assistance for us to develop a fleet of submarine in exchange for perhaps 2 platforms. We can allow them to explore the seas around us. So I think that's a very big consideration, but I think there is a big security dimension, because will we allow our foreigners to explore the seas, the resources in our territory? No, but if the French are willing to help us, maybe they could give us a big discount on the submarines that they are selling us.
But Manny, final question na lang. Speaking of the French, do we have any other options? Can we in fact speak with other nations? Which other nations in fact are in a position to offer us this kind of capability, and speak as well to where the French technology is at this point?
I think the French technology is far more advanced than the other countries that are opening submarines, like South Korea and India and Russia. Because the French submarine are NATO standard. No? So it is comparable with Americans, with British, although they are not the nuclear capable submarines. These are electric diesel submarines. But they could be very important to deter any aggressive action on our territory. And we have been training a lot of Navy officers on submarine in Canada, in India, South Korea, and France. So I think our Navy is capable and ready to man these submarines when they come.
Okay, maraming salamat. One News Defense Editor Manny Mogato. And now after the break, we will talk about the Korean Embassy launching an online visa appointment system after long queues forced them to halt acceptance of walk-in applications. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
$3 billion pesos. This was the budget recommended by the Budget Department for the Office of the Vice President for 2023. This is 223% or over 3 times higher than the office's current 713 million peso budget in the 2022 General Appropriations Act. The biggest chunk of the fund will be allocated for the maintenance and other operating expenses. The OVP attributes the increase primarily on the augmentation of travel expenses and financial assistance such as the Libreng Sakay program, medical and burial assistance, and other projects. And unlike the previous budget of the OVP, there will be ₱500 million peso budget allotted for confidential funds. These are some of the items that lawmakers from the Makabayan bloc would want to scrutinize, but a motion to swiftly terminate deliberation was raised by House Minority Leader Marcelino Libanan as parliamentary courtesy to the OVP.
While some members of the Makabayan bloc would like to propound questions on some new items in the budget, they also join us, but rather they will propound questions in the plenary to extend our courtesy to the office of the Vice President.
Because of this, the budget briefing lasted for only 13 minutes and no questions were asked. The Makabayan bloc slammed the move, describing it as blind approval of the OVP's budget. Still, Sara took the time to thank lawmakers for supporting her office.
And if there is anything that we can do to help you as an office, in your respective mandates, in your respective legislative districts and party lists, please do let us know. We are open to collaborations in helping our fellow Filipinos.
Meanwhile, the Vice President has drawn flack online after sharing on social media that she is using the presidential chopper to get to her family after engagements around the country. OVP spokesperson Reynold Monsayak clarified that the President doesn't fly daily to Davao City and that she and her family are now based in Manila.
Sa isang simpleng post ng pasasalamat, nilagyan ng anggulo at mali siya. Fake news ho yan na araw-araw ginagamit yung chopper para umuwi sa Davao. Ngayon, kapag meron na ho nakadiskubre ng chopper na kayang lumipad ng Manila papuntang Davao, makikisakay po ako. Salamat po.
The proposed 2023 budget of the OVP will be tackled at the plenary for debates. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
AP Showbiz Minute. Director Jean-Luc Godard, an icon of French New Wave film who revolutionised popular cinema, has died aged 91. His big screen career began in 1960 with his debut feature Breathless, and his controversial modern nativity play Hail Mary grabbed headlines when Pope John Paul II denounced it in 1985. Succession and Squid Game shared the Best Drama Series honour.
Where you at? World domination. That is where P-pop group SB19 is headed this September 17. They're about to embark on their first ever world tour. Josh, Pablo, Stel, Ken, and Justin are ready to wave the Filipino pride to the world.
Nakaka-pressure po kasi parang ito rin po ata yung first time na may Filipino pong mag-world tour, I think, or if ever sa mga groups po, sa P-pop groups. So yun po nakaka-pressure, and first time din namin lalabas ng bansa na sa US po, pumunta sa US and mag-perform sa mga tao doon. So nakaka-pressure po talaga. But at the same time, syempre po, very thankful kasi kung hindi dahil sa mga fans, sa 18, sa mga taong sumusuporta sa amin, hindi po kami magkakaroon ng world tour.
The Where You At World Tour starts at the Araneta Coliseum on September 17, followed by concerts in Cebu, Clark, and Davao. After the Philippine leg of their tour, they will be going to Dubai on October 29, New York on November 5, LA on November 12, and Singapore on November 27. SB19 finds it surreal that their fan base 18s are all over the world.
Kasi po sa Twitter, makikita mo doon, guys, sasabihin nila, nag-tweet sila, guys, pumasa ako ng board dahil sa inyo, kayo yung inspirasyon ko. Yung iba po parang sinasabi, umaayos na yung mental health ko dahil sa inyo, kayo yung sumagip sa akin yung music nyo. So, dun po, parang lalong nasa-strengthen yung purpose namin in life.
But success didn't come easy for the quintet. Josh says their success was 4 years in the making.
Dati kasi, commute po talaga na malala, as in, naglalakad nga po kasi para lang, di ba, pipila ka sa jeep, gano'n. As in, grabe kasi, Ortigas mo ako dati, Pasig. So pagdating dun, pag rush hour, alam mo na, wala ka na talaga sa akin, lalakad ka na lang instead of sumakay ka kasi gano'n dun, traffic din eh. So parang, ngayon po parang nakakagaan-gana, parang hindi mo na, hindi naman po. parang, wala po gano'n, grabe naman. Hindi po gano'n levels. Pero, as in, may improvement po na parang ngayon nakakapasok ka na sa training kahit pa paano na hindi kayong mamamatay sa pagod ka na sa biyahe pa lang.
As a reward for their hard work, SB19 plans to experience snow and go shopping after their concerts. The group also targets to go to Europe next. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Heads up! For those planning to visit South Korea soon, the Korean Embassy has rolled out its online appointment system to address the influx of walk-in applicants. Jenny Dongon with the story.
A number of visa applicants spent the night queuing at the Korean Embassy. Some of them want to attend a concert of K-pop sensation BTS next month.
Kasi free po yung concert nila doon. Kaya feeling ko malabo kasi pag dito, kaya try natin makipagsabak sa Korea.
Limited slots for online visa application is one of the problems. That's why some are just opting to walk in.
Kasi ang holding time na nila ngayon is November, December pa daw sila makakapila. Ganun. Parang sa dami po na nag-a-apply ngayon.
Other visa applicants also brought their parents with them.
Yung anak ko, K-pop talaga siya, idol siya. So ang favorite niya, yung NCT, which is yung nag-concert nung last time, yung NCT. So ngayon, gusto niya talagang makita lahat ng mga magagandang place sa Korea.
But not all were accommodated, as only 100 were allowed to enter the embassy. That's why as early as noon, some were already advised to leave and to register online first. Starting Thursday, walk-in visa applicants will no longer be allowed. All applications need to go through the Korean Embassy's online appointment system. They need to click reservation to visit a diplomatic mission to secure a slot. The 8:30 a.m. schedule is for accredited travel agencies or those with Korean spouses. Tourists may use the 9:30 a.m. time slot, while the 10:30 a.m. is for government or business transactions. The Korean Embassy advised applicants with confirmed schedule to bring all the needed documents. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, we are One News.
And that is the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Po si Gretchen Ho, stay safe Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.